Uranium Energy Corp, one of only 12 uranium producers in the world. UEC trades on the New York Stock Exchange. They have more than doubled their in-ground uranium resource over the past 2 years. They've also become one of only 6 uranium producers in the United States. Led by Amir Adnani, who has been ranked as one of the top resource CEOs by Casey Research, Amir has attracted major investors like Rick Rule of Sprott Asset Management, Li Ka-shing, the richest man in Asia, and institutions such as Vanguard and BlackRock. Learn more about Uranium Energy Corp at uraniumenergy.com or by calling 866-748-1030.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm here with David Cantieri, and he's the author of The Money GPS, and he does have a YouTube channel, The Money GPS, and we are excited to be speaking with him today. David, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. David, a lot of people are getting frustrated with precious metals at the moment, and in your content, you remind people why they shouldn't give up on the gold trade and silver and precious metals. So I'd like to start off with this and kind of see where it goes. What is the biggest risk factor for the global economic collapse today?
Well, what we're looking at is people's lives changing entirely. When you're looking at a collapse, you're not looking at a crash that we've had, for example, in 2008 or in the year 2000. You're looking at a collapse where everything changes. So upon, every so often, 30 to 40 years, we have a new monetary system. We're clearly overdue for one. Now, what's going to happen in this new evolution, let's call it, of monetary system? It's uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen. So we need to put our savings into things that are real. So when you hold on to things like gold, you're basically just buying time is all you're doing. We don't know the situation. People think that it's going to go to 10,000, 20,000, 100,000, a million. I'm not really one to bet on these numbers. That's something for these technical analysts that look at 200-day moving averages and all of this other thing, where I don't get into that. I simply realize that real assets will hold value over a long period of time, and therefore we should put our money into real assets, gold and silver being one of those, of a wide range of things that we need to invest in. So I also wanted to touch on the fact that you're looking at the gold price and perhaps you're thinking, well, not been doing well recently, so perhaps it's time to sell, or perhaps I shouldn't buy any additional. You need to realize that you're looking at the price of the futures market. You're not actually looking at what a particular commodity is worth. So these numbers are manipulated entirely. If you look at GATA, G-A-T-A, they're obviously one at the forefront of this, really breaking it down, and they know exactly what's going on. You can read their content to know that this is manipulated. So do I care what the price is going to be at? And the fact is that no, I don't. I simply know that it will be worth something down the road. That's what's really at stake here.
Do we have any other examples of where this happened in the past that will most likely be the situation that the U.S. is going to see, around the globe? You're talking about unprecedented times. Now, is there anything, though, that we can look to say, hey, this might be what our situation looks like in the next time frame of whenever we think this might happen?
Well, of course, this is definitely unique in its own ways because you have items that are in a deflationary environment and other things that are in a hyperinflation or inflation. So it's a little unique in that way. And also you add on top of it the derivatives, which are basically new in a historical sense. And then you look into all of the other things that have been put into place over these past years, particularly since the financial crisis politically, where it is new in a way. But just don't even need to look into the historical analysis. Look today at Venezuela. This is a very good example of this, where you can see that they've been rationing this system. People have to line up for basic goods. At the same time, you have an inflation rate, which the last time I checked was 63%. The people are ruined. They'll never be the same again for now at least 1 or 2 generations. This this group of people here in Venezuela are going to be ruined. So this is what we need to realize, that hyperinflation is obviously very destructive. When you try and control it by only making matters worse, you're going to fail. They have to default on all their debt, and this is just going to make the public there much worse off. Then you have to figure, when they're trying to rebuild, how exactly are people going to get work? The economy is completely destroyed, and so on and so forth. So we can use what's happening right now in Venezuela as sort of an indicator as to what's going to happen in the U.S., to some degree at least.
Sure. So in a collapse scenario, do you actually think hyperinflation will kick in immediately, or do you think that there might be a rush to dollars, kind of like we saw in 2008, where the dollar got stronger? And even over the last year, I think with some of the global problems, we saw a rush and a demand for U.S. dollars. And do you think this conventional wisdom of the U.S. dollar safe haven could kick into a higher gear if we do see a collapse type scenario before we actually see hyperinflation kick in?
To some degree, I could definitely agree with that. The U.S. dollar, although it's pretty unusual, it is seen as a safe haven when comparing to other currencies, because people know that the U.S. dollar is garbage. That's known all around the world, particularly in the East. But if you look at it more deeply, what are you comparing it to? Well, the euro, they're obviously going to go down and under. Then you look at Japan. Well, we know what's happened with them over the past few decades. There are some stronger countries, for example, with Germany, but they're stuck within the euro. So they have the problems of the other countries there that they need to face. And you really need a country that is really strong for long periods of time. The U.S. is simply there, weakening over the years. However, they have the Federal Reserve backstopping it. And they know that, countries know and investors know that they have some time to buy. At this point, the Federal Reserve will be there. They will eventually encounter a hyperinflation. But as of right now, there are only a few sections of the economy that are encountering this inflationary pressure, so they have time. And this is all about the current trading day. It's never about the long-term prospects. You need to understand that. These computer algorithms that they have running, all they're trying to do is make more profit today. If you think that, for example, biotech stocks are going to be great right through the year and on to next year, that's not what these trading algorithms do. They try to get today and make this the most profitable day. It's always today, never looking out into the future. This is what we really need to focus on.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And speaking of the Federal Reserve, it kind of reminded me of a question that I kind of have, and that is just the bankers and the government having this control over the monetary system. And we've seen them be able to control metals prices and kind of keep people in the monetary system the way it is, because that's what works for the people in power. But I guess my question is how long do you think they can hold it all together? Or could it be something that's very indefinite where we just don't know, or will it eventually just unravel to the point where it's uncontrollable and people will resort to things like precious metals and alternative currencies, maybe like Bitcoin and things like that? The whole aspect of this control that the powers that be have is a big question for me. Like, how much control do they have, and how long can they hold it all together?
Well, I have quite a contrarian view on this topic in particular, even within the alternative news. There are many factors going on, and there are many different levels here. So I'll try to just explain it briefly as possible. We have the politicians here who are really just minions of a greater system. I'm sure all the viewers know this, that the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and everything, they sit behind the scenes and they really control everything, like the puppet masters. So there are different levels to this. When you look into it deeper and understand the history, if you've read a lot of the history, not just through Bloomberg and whatever, all these different websites, if you actually read the monetary history, you'll find out that oftentimes what has happened is there have been controlled crashes. The crashes come into place in particular. It's done so strategically in order to then add to their wealth. So they crash the system on purpose and they buy it up for pennies on the dollar, whether it is real assets, for example, or whether it's equities, it all depends. However, they really dig their heels into the ground and they will bear some loss for a time being, knowing that they're there to buy it all up in the coming years. So that's what I see happening here with this. Now, the real thing that I want to get into is that we can expect a new monetary system to happen. A lot of people are thinking that China and Russia and the BRIC nations or something else is going to really collect together and bring in a new monetary system that's going to be the reserve currency. This could happen, but what we're talking about is elite who have been in control of this world for hundreds, if not thousands of years. They're not going to give it up overnight. That's not going to happen. We may have to engage in some sort of world war, but if you look into it even deeper than that, you certainly have these elites who control even those in China and Russia, but there's a lot of other activity that goes on, at least at the surface level. So what I would suggest is that a new monetary system is coming, and they will use a global economic collapse in order to bring that in. What the new monetary system will look like, I'm not too sure, but I have a feeling it's going to be something along the lines of an IMF SDR, and they'll do this backing our current currency system. So there's going to be a global economic collapse. The IMF, the EU, the US, the UN, everyone gathers together for a big meeting. It looks a lot like Bretton Woods, and they basically say, look, we want to save the system, so we'll have the IMF or one of these other nations they just create overnight. They have them really drop the plans and they say, okay, your currency is now the reserve currency, and then all the other nations, you continue using your currency. So the people who are watching their football and their sitcoms, they wouldn't know the difference. And essentially that's the way it will go. That's the way I see it. I've been reading the history now for many years and looking into the deeper teachings. That's really what I see happening.
No, that's interesting. I guess from what you're describing, though, it would be a loss of power from the U.S., considering the U.S. kind of monopolizes the world reserve currency right now, but giving it up to like a global currency, it would be a sacrifice in terms of the U.S. banks, the Federal Reserve, to have to split that power with other global leaders. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Well, basically, when you think of the U.S. banks, like let's say a JP Morgan doesn't care about the US. JP Morgan is only concerned with, in one sense, their profit, their corporate profits, but also much deeper is the power and control that they have over the global economic system. They're an offshore set of bankers. They're an offshore elite. They don't care about any particular country. They'll crash anything. They know that they could be there to buy everything up for pennies on the dollar. So that's what I see. I don't see any particular company or nation really fighting for anything in particular other than their own greed.
Well, David, in conclusion, right now in 2015, is there a current message that you want the people that listen to you and follow you to really understand? And if you can just kind of summarize that for our audience, what would that be?
Absolutely. So for 2015, what we can expect is additional volatility. Look at the equities markets that may, in fact, continue to increase. However, look at the same time, for example, the civilian labor participation rate, which is the amount of people actually in working, right? And now at this moment, we're at approximately a 36-year low. These are the real indicators that we need to look at. So keep your eye not on the stock market itself, not on the US dollar, but look at the real indicators of poverty, of unemployment, and of inflation. Look at your food prices when you go to the supermarket. These are the real indicators which will show you how well that you and your community are doing. And then essentially to prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So when you make your preparations, precious metals are an excellent way to preserve wealth, but don't put all of your eggs into one basket. That is never a good idea. You want to have all the different types of real assets that you can. I would also suggest that people take their money out of the banking system other than what they need for the daily transactions. So you can take that money and invest it into real assets. If you don't have much savings, you can always get some, quote, junk silver or common coins. These are only a few dollars worth. You can get some good stuff, simple storable food, maybe some bags of rice, additional bags of rice in your house, some canned foods, things like this, which will help you to prepare. And, it's really not a major investment. You don't need to be a Warren Buffett to be able to prepare for the worst. I would also say that, just continue to learn everything you can, learn from the different teachers, watch this channel here, watch other people out there, and just read as many books as you possibly can, learn the history, and prepare for your family and your friends.
That's great information right there. David, I really enjoyed our conversation. If people wanted to reach out to you or learn more about you, where would they go and how would they do that?
Yep. So basically, if you want to reach me and my channel, that is The Money GPS on YouTube. You can get me on there. And there's videos being posted practically every day on there. So we get into the economic news and other things like this, the political sense and all of these type of things. I do have a book, and it is, of course, entitled The Money GPS. That's available on Amazon. You could flip through it on there to see if that's something that you like. And other than that, I also have the Money GPS Insiders, which is basically an email that I send out every so often, and just good information that's sort of a continuation from my book as well, and it's totally free. So, just get on the YouTube channel and you'll get all the details.
Well, hey, David, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.
Excellent. Thank you for having me on.